Welcome to Vantage Point Podcast, a podcast brought to you by NWR Communications and 92 Studio. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. G'day and welcome to the latest episode of Vantage Point, where we try and get behind the driving success of ASX-listed companies. Today we've got with us Alexander Jannink, the CEO and founder of Acusensus. Acusensus listed on the ASX some 5 months ago, just in January of this year. Listed with a prospectus forecast of $37 million, an EBITDA of around $3.5 million. And probably rarely, particularly in these sort of uncertain times, it's upgraded twice. So just a couple of weeks ago, it upgraded to revenue of 41 to 42 and EBITDA of 4.7 to 5.1. The market cap of the company is around 85 million, and at the end of the March quarter, it had around 25 million of cash. So an enterprise value of 60 million, and a really fascinating company. So before I hand it over to Alex to go into detail around the products and whatnot, can you just start with why you founded the company? What was the driving force? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, good to be with you today, Simon. The company was founded 5 years ago. There are a couple of different reasons to found this company. One of them was just that there's a growing road fatality trend across Australia, across countries like Australia, where fatalities were rising again on the road after decades of declines. And I felt that a major source of this was mobile phone use by drivers. So we know that the number of minutes a driver uses a mobile phone has been increasing year on year. And then that really does lead to significant escalated crash risks and deaths and injuries. I had another more personal reason to found the company. About a decade ago, my friend James was riding his bike in a bike lane in Los Angeles, going up a hill daytime, and somebody ran into him from behind. Driver was impaired, and I was told that driver was texting. And so this idea of trying to do something with texting drivers has been with me for a decade, and I was fortunate enough to actually then be able to found a company to do something about it.
Would you say, and it's getting obviously a bit personal, but would you say that the incident around James has basically altered the path of your life in terms of driving towards making a real change? I
would say so. I don't think I would have founded Accusensus if that event hadn't have occurred. I think I would have gone into a different sector. Yeah,
it's great that it's making a significant difference, and we'll get into that. Before we go a bit deeper, if you could just sort of take a backward step in terms of talking about what Accusensus does and the revenue model, how you charge, and your existing customers.
So Accusensus is most well known as the company that developed and designed the technology that detects drivers who are using their mobile phone while they're behind the wheel. It's world-first technology developed here in Australia, and then it was deployed for the very first time on the New South Wales road network. It's been a very, very effective program that's changed driver behaviours substantially and coincided with a substantial road fatality reduction as well on that road network.
And when you talk about substantially, what are the sort of stats, facts and figures around that?
Yeah, so in New South Wales, number of people caught by camera using a mobile phone has dropped about sixfold right across the road network. It easily has the lowest prevalence of mobile phone use on any road network that we deploy cameras on. We've deployed in 5 continents. So there's just a minuscule amount of mobile phone use compared to other countries and even other states in the New South Wales road network.
Yeah, it's powerful. And in terms of the products and whatnot, obviously there's the mobile phone, but talk us through the rest of the product suite.
Yeah, so we started with that, and that was world first. And then we expanded that solution. It's basically like a really sophisticated version of a speed camera. It has a lot of artificial intelligence capabilities in there and some sophisticated imaging capabilities. And so from there, the next major contract that we secured was with the Queensland government, deploying mobile phone and then seatbelt enforcement right across the state of Queensland with trailers, with fixed cameras. And people not wearing their seatbelt, they contribute to about 20% of vehicle occupant fatalities. So it's a major source of road trauma that can be addressed quite easily. From there, we then further expanded the capabilities. We added speed enforcement, just fairly conventional bread and butter speed enforcement. and average speed enforcement and license plate recognition. And then for some of our clients, we're doing some really more advanced things like working out if people are wearing a helmet or not. That's a major source of fatalities in Southeast Asia, for example, of people not wearing a helmet. We can classify vehicles. We can do all kinds of things. But at our heart, everything that we do is about protecting lives on the road. And so when we take one of our heads-up trailer systems, it could simultaneously address the underlying cause of 2 in 3 road fatalities. And so the West Australian government was the first one to turn on all of those capabilities that I mentioned all at the same time. And at a press conference with the minister there, and he came out with this great line for our technology where he said, "This is the Swiss Army knife of traffic enforcement." And I thought, wow, that was good. You really did encapsulate what we do here.
Can you talk us through, day one, first couple of years, how big was the team? Obviously, you've raised money along the way to get to an IPO, and I think you've listed at the right time in terms of going past significant revenue and EBITDA positive. But can you just talk to what are the sort of key milestones that allowed you to keep raising money and winning these contracts and whatnot?
Yeah, sure. So the journey started in 2017, and I spent that year trying to find somebody who would back me an idea and put cash in without there being any proof that I could actually do anything. So found that with Adore Powertron and our chair, Ravin Merchandani, who really backed and supported the business. And that was extremely useful going into 2018 when we founded the business. We gave ourselves 2 years, or I gave myself 2 years of no salary, and after 2 years our money runs out and we have to give up
Survive.
this idea. But we were fortunate that the New South Wales government was ready to move on this issue, and so we spent 2018 really trying to develop the core technology, being able to take those clear photos through a windshield, being able to use artificial intelligence and work out is somebody using a mobile phone or not, which in 2023, in the era of chat GPT, that is like, well, of course you can use AI. But back in 2018, I had no idea whether we could actually use AI to solve this problem or not. That wasn't certain 5 years ago.
An early buzzword back then.
Yeah, the space has moved on a lot, and we do a lot of activity in machine learning and AI and have great capability there. But 5 years ago, that was very much in its infancy. So another sort of key milestone in the development for us was being accepted into the Melbourne Accelerator program. So the University of Melbourne, nurtures and gives some cash to 10 startups every year. And we were in that program, and that really did help us.
So you were the first MAP participant to list on the ASX, is that right?
That's true, yep. So MAP's been going for about a decade now, and so we're the only one to have listed publicly. Yeah, so fundraising story, and we had a Series A round in 2019, and that got $3 million into the business. We had a little emergency round from friends and families a little bit before that. And that was that marked the sort of transition between New South Wales pilot and then ongoing enforcement in New South Wales. Then COVID hit in 2020, and that was its own very interesting journey, because we're trying to solve a global problem, and we had global opportunities, and yet all the borders are closed. And it was actually quite good for us, because we learnt how do we install cameras totally remotely. And we're a company that was built and born in the cloud, which is thankful, and that really did help us along that journey, but it also helped us refine our processes. And so we've deployed cameras on 5 continents, and most of those installs we actually haven't physically attended ourselves.
It's a massive advantage, particularly in terms of scaling. In terms of the product, obviously it was a world first. The incumbents out there, why don't they do it? Why can't they do it? Why haven't they moved?
It is a world first, and so we are opening up a brand new market. So it's not necessarily obvious to an incumbent player what is the size of this market, because we're opening it up as we go, and telling customers this is the solution. You can see how well it works from New South Wales. You know it works. Now you can adopt that too. And so we're seeing that gradually open up. Most of Australia is adopting this technology now. And then we're seeing Western Europe start to open up tenders. We're seeing progress in the US. I think also technologically it is quite difficult to solve. And particularly if you're sitting on an old design of a speed or a red light camera, you can't upgrade that to do all this kind of artificial intelligence capability. You almost have to start fresh. You have to flip the design on its head. And so that's always a bit challenging for an existing company to do with its legacy, with lots of existing customers and a maintenance base and all that.
So in terms of being cloud native, was that an impediment at the start at all in terms of, cloud was back then still a little bit new, perhaps in terms of risk and security and all the rest of it, but obviously it's been a massive advantage that you actually can scale, and the incumbents, they've got legacy systems that are basically mashed together to try and do anything innovative. It's a full process.
You raise a really, really good point, which is no enforcement camera across Australia was connected to the cloud before Acusensus came along, basically, that they were on their own bespoke legacy networks, using old technology to connect things together. And we took that opportunity, and it was a punt for us to build everything on the cloud. But we took that opportunity and punt to say, look, this is brand new enforcement technology. Of course, it needs to be cloud-based. New South Wales, that took some convincing, that's for sure. But to their credit, they did embrace it. And as a result, they actually have an enforcement camera network that is far more secure than any legacy network. You're standing on the shoulders of giants when you're using the cloud. Amazon Web Services or any of those other big cloud providers, they spend an enormous amount of time, energy and money in ensuring the security of their systems, the uptime of their systems, and then we just get to be the beneficiaries of that. And now we've seen every government that we go to, it's like, yeah, that's fine, you can run it on the cloud, no problem. But 5 years ago, that was nobody could use cloud in this space.
In terms of the AI, you've talked a little bit about it before, and the platform that you've developed. Can you talk to us how sort of forward that is, how cutting edge it is? Are there any other competitors trying to do the same thing? Obviously not in the same way, but just talk to us about you've been live for 4 or 5 years. You've taken you tell me, but millions and millions of photos, data points. We know that AI, machine learning, the more data that it gets, the smarter it gets. Talk to us about the sort of head start and advantage there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the more data you put into an AI system, as long as it's good quality data into that machine learning system, the better the kind of outcome that you can get. Something that's really unique about how we approach AI and machine learning, that's unique not just in the traffic enforcement sector, but across any sector, is that we don't store a giant database of the thing that we're trying to find. So we took the policy that we're not storing images of drivers. And so we just don't do that. And yet we've worked out how do you actually learn, improve, train an AI machine learning system without that. And so every vehicle that goes past is an opportunity for us to learn. And that's what happens. And as you said, we have had hundreds of millions of vehicle transits past our cameras. We're still the only company that operates live enforcing mobile phone or seatbelt enforcement contracts. I think globally, and then maybe some small video analytics kind of approaches to this, but that doesn't really meet the rigor required of an Australian government or a UK government or a Netherlands government or something like that.
How do you sort of look at the rest of the world? Obviously, Australia's almost all done in terms of the states embracing the technology and whatnot. How do you sort of look at the rest of the world? Have you invested time and effort, money prior to listing in the US? And I talked about Western Europe and whatnot. Can you sort of run us through how they sort of differ to Australia and how that adoption is likely to look?
Yeah, sure. So you're absolutely right. The majority of our revenue does come from Australia. Almost 40 million of the 41 or 42 for this financial year. There's still a little bit of growth to go in the Australian market in that core heads-up product of mobile phone enforcement. West Australia has announced their intent. South Australia is the same. And so there's still a little bit more to go in this market. But we see an enormous amount of growth to come internationally. And we've spent over 3 years on the ground in the United States, and I think over the past year, we've really kind of worked out the model. So worked out who will pay for our solutions, who will use our solutions, and then have some really great leading indicators of states that are willing to adopt this technology already.
Leading indicators, I think you talked about in the last quarterly that went out in April, but around funding applications. There's 4 states that had applied. That's specifically for the Acusensus technology, isn't it?
That's right. So they have specifically put in for federal government grants. And we know that the federal government in the US will look at this very favourably to utilise this technology because the US just experienced like an 8% increase in road fatalities.
What, in a year?
Yeah, so
Wow.
they're up at 42,000 people a year dying on the roads. And we know that between 7 and 10% of drivers are actively using a mobile phone in the US. It's a major source of road trauma for them. And so if they could replicate what New South Wales has achieved across all 50 states, you would see something like 10,000 fatalities a year reduction.
Yeah, it's crazy.
If you could actually stop people using their mobile phones like we've done in New South Wales.
So obviously, you're a technology-first company. I know I've heard you talk a lot before about innovation and whatnot. What are some of the things that are sort of behind the scenes, or probably go to why? What have you developed from inception to now? What's in the sort of pipe here in Melbourne?
Yeah, so the first product that we developed was the heads-up solution, which is that product that's designed to automatically detect if drivers are using the mobile phones, and then expanded that out to be looking at mobile phones, seatbelts, speeding, average speeding, license plates. And so that's all an automated solution. That's what you see on the road networks here in New South Wales, Queensland, the ACT, and piloted in several of the other states. From there, we then moved into what we call Heads Up Real Time, and that's a policing assistance tool. So it's really trying to revolutionise how traffic policing is done, and that's really geared towards the US market. So where we deploy one of our Heads Up trailer systems, and it screens live by the roadside as somebody goes past. Are they on the phone? Are they wearing the seatbelt? And then forwards the evidence of any illegal behaviour to a waiting police officer or police officers. And so they could be waiting a few hundred metres down the road and then effect a traffic stop and use that evidence to actually then educate that driver, change their behaviour. And
that's, sorry to interrupt, but that's really important, particularly in the US, in terms of understanding the sort of politics and the way that they work. It's empowering the troopers or the police officers in terms of picking them up as opposed to potentially displacing them. That if you have it fixed there, there's no need for the police officers and whatnot. Is that a fair assumption?
That's exactly right. And so you go from something in an automated camera space that is just a hated technology in the US to this kind of technology where the police officers absolutely love it. This has no connotation with revenue raising. It's not about that whatsoever. This is about changing behaviours. And, an officer intervening by the side of the road is actually more effective, changing that individual's behaviour.
Rather than getting a ticket in the mail.
Rather than getting a ticket in the mail. And what's kind of interesting in our space is that, okay, you've got some people using the phone, you've got some people not wearing a seatbelt, you've got some people speeding, but you've also got a group of people who are doing all of them at the same time.
Yeah, reckless.
And that's sort of 1 in 200 drivers over there will actually be actively using a phone, speeding more than 10 miles an hour over the limit and not wearing a seatbelt. And if you run through the fatality risks associated with those behaviours, that driver would have a 180 times increased risk of death over somebody who is, a sober, attentive driver, basically. So this intervention, we think, can work to actually sort of really change the behaviours of a targeted set of individuals who are causing a lot of danger on the road.
And sorry, just to bring you back in terms of the innovation and other products that you've developed and that are in the pipeline, can you just talk to the rest of those?
Yeah, so I talked through the heads-up technology, which is really that super advanced version of a speed camera. Taking some of those technology elements, we then also produce what we call Acusensus Harmony, which is just a speed enforcement solution. And so we operate about 40% of mobile speed operations in New South Wales using the Harmony solution. And then we've also just picked up a contract in Queensland to put trailer-based Harmony solutions across the state of Queensland to try and reduce speeds there. It's also been deployed overseas as well, most notably in India. We've got several fixed sites of this for speed enforcement. And then from there, we've got various other flavors of this technology where it's been adapted to other use cases that our customers have come to us with. So our customers have come to us for monitoring railway crossings, and we've supplied that in Victoria and New South Wales. Have come to us to say, hey, can you monitor the freeways for us when we close a lane, using the electronic signs? And so we're doing that in Western Australia, where we're automatically watching the signs and knowing when they're changing and then capturing the behaviour of the drivers and when they're compliant or not. From there, and there's various other things, like I think I mentioned earlier, looking at people wearing a helmet. What are the little e-scooter riders doing in Perth? Then the next product lines that we're really working quite actively on, which is a lot more of the R research rather than research and development. We've got an impaired driving project. So a major remaining source of road trauma is drug drivers and drink drivers. And depending which country you go to as to which of those is the worst. And these are very difficult to enforce as well, again, depending on the country. So we're developing a tool that could be used to work out, as the cars go past, which of the drivers is likely to be impaired by drugs or alcohol, or perhaps fatigue, or they might be distracted.
Would that be AI based as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're just coming out of the simulator now. We've got support from the Federal Office of Road Safety. We've got support from Griffith University as an academic partner here. And so we've worked out what are the kinds of vehicle and driver behaviours that we need to monitor to work out if they're impaired. And now the next step in the second half of this year is to take that into the real world and to prove it out. Does it work as we think it should work and can work? And then the final product line we're working on at the moment is a road worker protection product, which we call Acusensus Guardian. And that product is around alerting road workers to potential danger. It could be vehicles coming into their work site. It could be plant and machinery. It could be various things. And road work, construction work by the side of the road is one of the highest risk occupations in Australia. And so we're trying to provide an extra level of protection to those workers with this product line.
And something like in Victoria with the 4 police officers, that'd be a...
Yeah, that is an exact case that we're targeting with the first responders. Where the Eastern Freeway crash of a few years ago where the 4 officers were killed. If our solution had been installed onto those police cars, I mean, obviously it was never available back then, but looking into the future, then it would have detected the truck veering across multiple lanes, would have given those 4 officers a really noticeable warning.
Because it's like that was like 5 to 10 seconds.
Yeah, you get about a 5-second notice, which is enough time we've found to respond and get out of the way of danger.
Yeah. And in terms of obviously listing, how have you sort of found the experience? Has it changed internally in terms of, how many employees do you have now?
We've got about 120 employees, not all of them full-time.
Yep. And so in terms of how they're sort of motivated or demotivated, depending on how the share price has gone, have you experienced anything like that at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we take a long-term view here. We've still got a lot of growth ahead of us, and this is just another step on the journey. It's not the end of the journey. We're nowhere close to the end of our journey.
It's you've achieved a hell of a lot in 5 years.
Yeah,
is it too simplistic to say, it's founded in 2017, commercialised, started to into 2018, 2019. You've won something like more than $130 million, in contracted revenues, just really in Australia, in a few years. Is it too simplistic to sort of, you've already laid foothold in US, in Europe? Is it too simplistic to say, if you can do 42 million, a year now, fast forward 3 years, you had no money really in terms of getting to that level. Sort of watch us how fast we can go now, or is there going to be impediments in terms of politics and whatnot? Like what could this be? Could it be a business that does, and it's not sort of a forecast at all, but that is $100 million, $150 million business in 5 years' time, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think we have a number of different opportunities in front of us, each of which can be very large. So You look at Australia paving the way, and as you said, so we've grown that from 0 to 40 million, and then without a big balance sheet that we do have now, without the proof of our corporate governance that we do have now being publicly listed.
Because that'd make a massive advantage in terms of from a regulatory standpoint.
For government clients, absolutely.
Yep.
So a number of extra ticks that you can get on every tender for ticking those boxes. And so now we're looking overseas. This is a global problem. Everybody's got the same problem. And in fact, some have it even worse than us. So the US has an even bigger problem than us. And so we're seeing, I think, a much larger market opportunity in the US than Australia should ever be able to get to. Just look at the size of the country, the population, etc. So our goal would really be to grow that arm of the business to be the same or greater size than the Australian arm of it. And then when we look at the UK, where we're doing some really good work in the UK and have a lot of positive support across the media, across police, across the general public. The UK has a much larger population than Australia, again, and has a lot of different traffic enforcement cameras installed. So that should, again, be an equal or larger opportunity for us than Australia. And, we are the market leaders here. And so I think that bodes well. And then we've got all of Western Europe as well as nations that have a high propensity to adopt traffic enforcement solutions like this and a big problem with it.
And one thing that I sort of wanted to make clear, in terms of the fines and revenue raised from basically Acusensus technology, there's no kickback, there's no clip, there's no sort of incentive, and just understanding why governments, particularly for instance Australia, are adopting this. It's not just the distinguish and separation of powers, that it's to reduce road trauma, not for revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we're supplying a road safety tool. This is absolutely not a revenue generation tool. That's not how the government departments buy it, and it's not how we sell it either. So our commercial model is just a fixed monthly service. Almost all of our contracts are service contracts. So where the equipment is manufactured and owned by us, we go and deploy it or install it where our client wants us to. And then we certify it, we maintain it, operate it, do the first level of human review of the evidence, and then basically send to our clients confirmed prosecutable data of people who are breaking one of the major traffic rules. And so it's very consistent month on month for us. Our ultimate goal is that nobody gets caught. And so it would almost be crazy for us to adopt a model under which we got paid, like a clip of the ticket, to use some of the terminology that has been in the media before. And so that's how we approach the market here and internationally.
If I can say so, I think it's a compliment. You're a relatively young CEO of an ASX listed company. How do you, obviously being a listed company, but more so, just a company in general, how do you go, or how do you look about leadership and driving, progress within the Accusensus organisation?
I'm pretty fortunate to have just a really strong group of people in the company who really do believe in the vision and the missions, and the vision and the mission of the company. And so really great executive team leading that, and broadly 120 just fantastic employees to work with who have just been helping us to grow it, expand it. We have asked a lot of our team, and they've never failed to deliver and to continue to delight our customers.
Certainly being on the receiving end and seeing how hard you work, I believe it, but at the same time, I think probably there's a fair bit of inspiration that comes from you and the purpose of obviously founding the company. It's been awesome to have you on. You've done a lot in a short space. You've now got a bit of a fortress in terms of a balance sheet to go out and win the world. You're not trying to raise money now and put employees in the US or UK. You've done that for a few years prior to listing, which is so much better for a potential investor looking at this now. So we wish you all the luck with the journey and look forward to following it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks very much, Simon. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.